The sound of fresh outlook and the start of this week's show. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Toschi. Lots to talk about this week, including a look into an audio recording that has led to public outcry across the country and the National Basketball Association. Now, as you've likely heard, LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling is in a lot of trouble this week after a taped conversation was leaked to a third party that contains some racist comments. It's not the first time the billionaire has faced these charges. A few years back, he paid a nearly $2.8 million settlement to resolve a federal lawsuit accusing him of excluding blacks and Hispanics from his rental properties. But what about the mistress who is getting her 5 minutes of fame? What were her motives? Let's have a look and talk it out.
Banned for life and a $2.5 million fine. Clippers owner Donald Sterling received the most severe punishment from the NBA commissioner for making racist comments against African Americans.
And he may not participate in any business or player personnel decisions involving the team. He will also be barred from attending NBA Board of Governors meetings or participating in any other league activity.
NBA legends and fans say the ban marks a strong step to ending racial discrimination.
It's a great day. It's a great day for, the United States. It was a great day for the NBA. It was a great day for all people of all races, but especially, African Americans, Latinos, who, he was speaking out against.
And to talk more about this case, we are joined by former White House aide Dee Dee Benkie, Dr. Michael Mckoy from Rutgers University, and Professor Yohuru Williams from Fairfield University, and we welcome all of you here. Well, we want to first start talking about this case and this recording. Obviously, this was some harsh words that he spoke, but the question is, was it legal? Dee Dee, we'll start things off with you.
Well, I think in a court of law, although we're not in a court of law in this situation, so that's the big difference. But if we're in a court of law, would this be admissible? I doubt it. Yeah. Because it's against the law in California anyway. I mean, they both were supposed to be aware. They weren't. I think this woman needs to go to jail. I mean, really what she did was terrible. And believe me, this guy is just despicable. But he was in his own house, and she recorded him, so it's really over the top, and it's very weird who that third person is. And set it up. I don't know. It's a little fishy, I think. Maybe a little magic going on here, if you get my drift.
Dr. Williams, what are your thoughts?
Same reaction, partly because it is illegal to wiretap or tape someone without their permission. So that's problematic. What's interesting, though, is that Donald Sterling made these comments, and she happened to catch him being very candid about his feelings about race in particular, and sharing views which, quite frankly, the record seems to support he's held for quite a long time. So even though the information was obtained in this way, which is illegal, the end result is the same. Donald Sterling is exposed for what he is, a bitter racist.
And it certainly has opened the discussion nationwide and worldwide even. There's been a lot of chatter on the internet from folks from overseas. It certainly brings up the case and the topic of privacy as well. And if you do something in your own home, is that, again, admissible into court?
Well, I think this case exposes two bigger questions outside the controversy itself of what he said. One, what's taken the NBA so long to actually sanction him for actual illegal racist practice he had with housing? But then two, also, do we have privacy anymore? I mean, are we now getting into a sort of informal thought police? What he said was absolutely reprehensible, but he's a free citizen. He can believe reprehensible things, and he certainly has the right to express them, especially in private, and especially with somebody who is an intimate of his. And so this tape, I mean, even if you listen to it, and I listened to the long recording, there are even parts of it that sound like were put together. It doesn't even sound like a free-flowing conversation. So it's,
That brings up a third point that I wanted to talk about as well. I mean, in today's digital world, you can alter anything. Now, he did admit that these were his comments, but still, if this is going to be a precedent moving forward, is this something that will happen in the future if somebody can take something and alter it? Dee Dee?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, look, he may have been very jealous because she's standing there with a, good-looking black guy, and so he was just yelling at her, and it was some fight between them. I mean, look, the guy's a racist, clearly, and he is despicable, but again, it was in the privacy of his own home. Was it manufactured? Was he drunk? Was he on drugs? I mean, we don't know any of these things, and now he's banned for life.
And if you listen to the recording, I mean, again, because we're all in agreement about how reprehensible he is, but one, listening to her is even more interesting because she's being so like, oh, but I love you. I mean, obviously she knows she's being recorded.
Yes, of course.
And she's very much tailoring what she says to come off as innocent. So it makes you even wonder, what do their conversations really sound like?
And she's not very smart. Let's just put it out there. She's a whack job. I mean, some of the things she said.
But I'm also going to say, though, that she's been getting her 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of fame. She's been on Barbara Walters.
But it doesn't seem like it's a fame she wants. I mean, I think she expected to come out as a
I
hero.
think she got tricked into it. I think someone talked her into this, and there's something going on.
I don't think
on
this
the
is
side.
turning out the way she expected. I don't think she's coming off looking
and
well.
there were the proceedings that she was pursuing, or that Donald Sterling's wife was pursuing against her for alienation of affection. So the backstory to this is as interesting as what we're seeing play out above ground. But what the NBA did in delivering the death penalty to Donald Sterling and kicking him out the league was absolutely the right thing to do, given its demographic, given its audience, given where we are as a society. But it does raise some interesting questions about what rights you have when you're engaged in a conversation. We talk about things like Google Glass now, cell phones that pick up audio. So this was deliberate, but then it raises those questions as well.
Well, yeah, I think once the immediate things were settled, I think the two long-term conversations we're going to have, one is about privacy, and then the other is about just the norms of the NBA itself. Again, why did this take so long?
I'm going to add one more to that, and I think it's going to be if you tamper with audio or video recordings in the future as well. Yeah. I think that's going to be a third very big topic.
I think it's unfortunate the timing, because the NBA should have come down on him with the housing situation, because that is illegal and that's terrible.
Well, he was slapped with a $2.8 million settlement on that one, but that was a federal lawsuit.
I think the NBA should have kept him out then. This time's a little hazy. I mean, we don't know if this is even right or not or true. I mean, again, we know what he is, but for it to happen this time, it's unfortunately they didn't nail him earlier.
He was nailed not only on that federal lawsuit, but there were several other different cases where they said that he had racist slurs and things like that. So yes, he is certainly guilty.
We know how to make things, which is terrible. And here's the other thing: it's a business thing. Think about it. You know, they had sponsors pulling out left and right. I mean, really, the Clippers had no choice.
Let's go talk about that though for a minute. Also, why should the team? I understand that he's the owner of the team, but that also affects the players who are also suffering right now. Why should the team also be slapped with all these sponsors pulling out? I don't think that's fair.
Well, again, one thing I just want to completely agree with what Dee Dee said. I mean, he should have been sanctioned, because again, you're talking about the federal lawsuits, the NBA should have followed up by sanctioning him the way they're sanctioning him now. Had that not been the case, had it simply just been this recording and there weren't these other incidents, what I would have liked to see Adam Silver have done, is to simply say, we're going to give free agency to all of the players, to all of the coaching staff, and then they can walk if they want to. They don't have to be employed by someone who has such bigoted views, because I hear what you're saying, that the players shouldn't be sanctioned, but this guy has to be sanctioned for this type of
wouldn't that set a terrible precedent? Like, if you ever had a team that they just all of a sudden didn't like the owner, or for whatever reasons, how would you control that in the future?
Dr. Williams? You're right. They're contractually obligated to play, and that was part of the problem here in terms of this conversation, is that the players themselves were free to boycott, but what would the repercussions be for them engaging in that type of behavior? If the NBA hadn't taken sanctions, then you would have had a situation where the players themselves may have had to do something very dramatic, or the fans. I think the reason that these sponsors pulled out is they were saying, look, we play to a much larger audience, and what we'd like to happen here is for the Clippers and the NBA to do the right thing. The interesting thing here is the NAACP was actually going to award this guy for the second time. Now that speaks to his business practices. He was smart enough to know that he had to play this public relations game, partly because of that $2.8 million suit that he had earned for the housing discrimination.
And there was actually a recent article in the New York Times, I think it was just yesterday, that basically the NAACP is now putting it all on the head of the LA chapter. I mean, basically there was just a complete slash job, and I'm not saying the information wasn't accurate, it's probably all accurate, but it was basically showing how the chapter in the LA, basically he's responsible, he's the one who decided this, we were against it, and they're really trying to distance themselves from this fast, because when we think about broader conversations, that's another issue. The NAACP, its role as a civil rights organization, took a really big hit, and they're in serious damage control right now.
Absolutely. That's an interesting point.
$1 he's getting a ton of money in LA, so that's what it is. And even the hospital that he gave money to, they're like, we don't want your donating money, we're out. So everybody's distancing themselves from him, and they should.
Yeah.
Well, if you were Donald Sterling right now, what do you do? Would you invest in some sort of an educational program to teach kids about diversity and things like that? That's one idea people have had. An apology. I mean, what would you do for damage control if you were Donald Sterling?
What, Mia, I was actually talking with another colleague at Rutgers, and he just sort of floated I know, of course, it wasn't serious, but he floated this idea. He's like, did they plan this on purpose? The value of the Clippers has skyrocketed since this has happened. It's like, what does he do? Wait a week and then sell. I mean, he's going to make. That's the terrible irony of this. He's going to make up. I mean, we're sort of joking because he's going to make about $1 billion. Well,
that's almost like a conspiracy theory there.
I mean, yeah, we're sort of joking back.
The Magic Johnson thing, I kind of believe that one now.
But it's sort of like, yeah, he's going to make $1 billion of this. What does he do? Again, sell in a week and then live wherever he wants to live.
All right. Well, there's Oprah's in the running.
Oprah, we've got Magic Johnson. I think what we're seeing now is the only thing that Sterling can do, and that's play the sympathy card. It's come out that he's got prostate cancer. People are looking at him saying, look, this is an old man. Give him a break, not in terms of what he said, but in terms of the fact that being elderly in age, this may be a new generation.
He's running around with a young girl, though.
Right.
Well, yeah, but look at her. I mean, that didn't help him out very much, did it?
Let me ask you, I mean, this was something that was brought up that from the mistress herself, who said, well, he comes from a generation, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, but he comes from that generation.
The Paula Deen cardigan, no thanks. There's no excuse for it at all. I don't care how old you are. 8
I
years old,
represent
108, forget it.
Yeah.
No excuse for that.
I represent the Hispanics, so I certainly was a little bit shocked and appalled as well. But because he is in that generation, maybe if he did invest in some sort of education.
They try to give the same thing to Paula Deen. I thought it was so terrible that they want to give an excuse for your age.
when you say mention age, I can understand age when it comes to you don't know the right politically correct terminology. I have I have grandparents who will still sometimes say the word Oriental, right?
Yes.
Because they're not of the age to know that you're supposed to say Asian. That's one thing, and you don't know terminology. How old do you have to be to know hating people is wrong?
And the older you are, the more you should know.
Like,
you should have figured it out by
now. And he knows
then.
Magic Johnson. He's friends with Magic Johnson. So what's age have to do with it?
And he's an employer in a league which is more than 90% African American.
Absolutely.
So public relations aside, this is a situation where you can look at the, Captain America is a movie about a guy who goes to sleep for a generation and wakes up and he's a walking anachronism. In a lot of ways, Donald Sterling is a walking anachronism, but it's the truth of the moment we find ourselves in, where you have this generation that elects the first African-American president that talks about being post-racial, and you have the reality of the fact that you've got people who are still alive, who grew up under segregation, who will die believing that the races need to be separated. And we have to deal with that reality as a society.
Well, again, next steps moving forward for the LA Clippers.
I think they'll be just fine.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, obviously he's banned for life, so we know he's not going to be around, and it'll be interesting to see who ends up owning them. So I think it'll be exciting for them. Oprah, Magic Johnson, who knows?
And I think it also just depends on how much Sterling decides to tie this up in court. I think that's really the X factor.
That's going to be it. And I think he won't go down without a fight. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong. Dr. Williams?
Completely agree. I think the great thing here is if the Clippers were to win a championship, what a statement that would
be. Yeah.
It would really give us an opportunity to talk about race in an earnest way, particularly after the year that we've had. But I think going forward, I believe the franchise will endure, and it actually will be one of the more valuable franchises because of what people will be able to do when they come in and use this as an opportunity to educate.
They will be much better off without him. We know that. And he'll probably die. Good for that. I don't
Dee Dee.
care. No, he's a bad, bitter, mean man.
All right, we're going to come right back on that one. Don't go away, everyone. When we do come back, we're going to talk about what this means for the future of the LA Clippers. We'll be right back.